The good Lord has given me another day on this fine planet we call terra firma, and I'm about to make it your problem. So join me as we get together to destroy our neurons. Hooray!
Welcome to the Pondering Professor, where linguistics meets the world.
Okay, hello everyone. I will be reacting to this video. This is my first reaction video. So let's all get brain hemorrhaging together as we watch this. I'm only going to react to language parts because there's so much wrong with this video that if I debunk everything in it, it's going to be a 3-hour video. And I don't want to make something that long because I frankly don't have time. So let's get to it. The first thing we're going to have a look at is the samurai question. Was he a samurai?
Down to I'm gonna ask both of you this, but I guess we'll have to do it one at a time. But let's just get it out of the way. Uh, was Yasuke a samurai? Floyd.
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain why? How?
Why?
It's
How?
like playing devil's advocate here.
Okay.
Like
Why? How? Why? Okay.
some just to a non-believer. Can
Okay.
you try
Well,
to convert
okay.
them?
Well,
Look, I find it funny that they're using the term believer, non-believer. It is quite funny to see someone being deified like this in real life. Usually, as social scientists, it's very hard to see the deification process happen in real time. And this is it. It's basically a cult. So it's quite interesting.
I don't try to convert people. People have to convert themselves.
Okay. Good outlook. Good outlook.
All I can say is that in the research that I've done, this is a character I've heard about all my life, especially when I got into martial arts, right? And because I was in martial arts and I was living in Chicago, in a town where this was where all of the Japanese internees came. We had a lot of Japanese martial artists who would come here. We had a Kendo school. We had Aikido in the YMCA. We didn't have karate then. We had judo. The striking arts were like later, but we did have samurai cinema, right? We had a monthly, we had a weekly samurai series at Francis Park Auditorium. So between all the martial arts, the judo and the karate, I was looking at Chambara films, right? Saturday and Sunday afternoons, which is fascinating because the films were like beautiful. But I wanted to take Kendo, and the lady that I was talking to that I bought my judo gis from, she said, she had lived in Japan during the war, and she said, there was a famous black samurai from one of the warring periods of Japan, but she didn't remember his name, right? And
So famous
the
that you
Kendo
can't
teacher
remember
kind
the
of looked
name.
at me funny. He says, "Yeah, I've heard about it." But I found out about it. There was a book. There was a guy in Chicago by the name of Hammurabi Rob who wrote little Black history pamphlets, and he was friends with a guy named J.A. Rogers, who wrote a book called The World's Great Men of Color. And so he had a section on Asia, but we still didn't get to the bottom of who Yasuke actually was. It took me years until I went away to Tanzania and I started questioning people, and I was seeing I was seeing, like, back then I didn't hear anything about him being a slave. All this stuff comes up from the Jesuits, right? The Jesuits in their reports, he's mentioned as a slave. In the Japanese, in the Lord Nobunaga Chronicles, it's never mentioned as a slave. They say he was a kurobozo.
Yeah, the Japanese version of the Jesuit documents does mention the word slave. Uh, what he's about to say is also wrong.
Right? A kurobozo is a dark, mysterious figure.
No, it's not. Uh, Kurobozu means a black monk. It's made of three characters, and the zu part is well, it's referring to zhu in Chinese, and it's really referring to someone in a kind of religious capacity, but that might just be association with the Jesuits. Now, there's another meaning for the whole bozu thing, which means someone with a bald head. So that's some more thing that the Assassin's Creed gets wrong too. This is a descriptive word. It's talking about someone that has either no hair, like fine Mr. Webb here, or someone with very shortly trimmed hair, which is quite typical in East Africa. Um, so that's also completely wrong. It does not mean any kind of mysterious figure. It has no such connotation. So from the get-go, even basic words are wrong.
Right. It's most of the Buddhas back in the 16th, 15th, 16th century, a lot of the Buddhas were black, right? So if somebody black
No.
turned up, they would immediately associate them with this Buddha, and there was a certain mysticism about it. But you know, see, living in a
So there's a myth about the whole Bodhavista thing going on, that Buddha was black because he has curly hair, but in actual fact, it has nothing to do with curly hair. It's when he got rained on during meditation, it is said that snails crawled onto his head to protect it. So actually, the curly hair that you see on Buddhist images are snails, not hair.
America, the thing about living in America is that we're really isolated. You know, we're really isolated from a lot of what's happening in the world, and a lot of us tend not to be very curious, and we create these constructs that have nothing to do with with the rest of the world. You know, I live
Exactly. I'm glad you admit that.
outside the world. I lived in Africa. I lived in Europe. I traveled I traveled from Morocco all the way to Tanzania by land. You know, I was 20 years old. I wasn't scared of shit back then. You know, I was like, I had no fucking, I had no idea.
Don't worry.
I had no idea. You know what I mean? Today, I look back on that trip, I'm going like, damn, I could have been left in the middle of the desert someplace and nobody ever would have known it. You know, and but yeah. So doing that trip across Africa taught me a lot. It gave me, but what I was seeing was these remnants of warrior cultures, right? Where, you know, all throughout the Muslim countries. I mean, blades were every place. People practice, you know what I mean? You could pass through a neighborhood and you would hear the clank of swords, and you would go behind a wall, and somebody would be practicing these skills with these not necessarily scimitars, but sort of curved instruments. There's a guy. Damon Stith is in Texas, and he has this organization where he teaches people African swordsmanship. And I don't know if he's ever been to Africa, but when I see him, he's got the same skills. So it's like Yasuke's origins are in Africa, right? We talk about Japan, right? Everybody wants the last samurai. Everybody wants Shogun. But that's not the story we want to tell. We want to tell, who was this guy? Where did he come from? He was an elite African warrior. He was
So everything he says here has actually no record. There's no record of any of this. It's a claim made by him with zero evidence. I don't know what to say to that. I guess I'm Superman because I say that I am, and I have no record to prove it, but believe me, because I say it. I'm not sure what this is. I'm not sure how this is even an argument.
He was a Baritongo warrior, right?
How do you know that? We literally don't even know his real name. So how do you know that he was from that specific tribe?
A Baritongo warrior they're trained, you know, like when you think about the Jedi and what happened to the Jedi, when colonialism came in, that happened to every warrior culture that couldn't resist cannons, right? Who knows the great martial artists that were lost during the Boxer Rebellion? you know, and it's repeated over and over again. These warrior cultures who resisted colonialism were wiped out. So we don't get the history, you know. Now, but the oral history remains.
Thank you for that. And Walt.
Yeah, and oral history is notoriously untrustworthy. It's interesting as a study of folktale. It's interesting from an anthropological point of view. It's even interesting from a linguistic point of view. But as far as history goes, oral histories are extremely, extremely unreliable. And any serious historian that you say, I have only this oral history, this must have happened, they will laugh at your face.
Walt, was Yasuke a samurai?
So this is the supposed Japanese historian.
As I think I said in the email to you originally, you asked me the question, and I said, quoted, who was the guy, Hangman from Top Gun Maverick, as he would say, damn straight. He was most definitely a samurai. And what's amazing about him, and the thing that doesn't get told about Yasuke, is just how brilliant of an individual he was.
We have literally about 5 lines in total written about him. So I don't know how you would... How are these people doing this?
And let me explain what I mean by that. Yasuke, the slave issue, I've seen discussions about it. It's more like a Roman slave as opposed to the image that we have of today. In which
Right.
however he came into, he was a bodyguard to Valeriano.
This also is not recorded anywhere. He's recorded as a valet. There is no record of him being a bodyguard for Valeriano at all. This is a complete urban legend.
And that's what his job was. The one issue I always wonder about, and which I haven't seen a good explanation for, is how he switches from Valeriano to Nobunaga.
That's actually recorded in the Japanese documents. It says that he was given to Nobunaga. Don't shoot the messenger. That's what it says. He was given to Nobunaga. What do you want to infer from that?
Yasuke arrives with Valeriano in 1579. And basically they make their way all the way up to Kyoto. And they arrive in Kyoto in 1581. So he's been hanging. Valeriano is the father visitor of, basically he's in charge of all missionary efforts in the East. But he was powerful enough to rise to his position in only 3 years. And that's a political move, if anything, to be the spot where he was in. At the same time, he was also the one who told the rest of the Jesuits, this is a better culture than we have. We need to adopt their culture, not forcing them to adopt ours.
I would really like to see the source for this because I've not seen that being said anywhere. He did, however, have a soft approach in his attempts to make himself popular in Japan. Some of his predecessors were not so soft in their approach, and it stepped on a lot of toes. So he was going for the carrot rather than the stick approach. Not the same thing. The Jesuits notoriously, even in Europe, look down on everyone. They did not think any other culture is superior to theirs or to the church. They were the political wing of the church.
But in 1579, Yasuke, you have to think of him as basically, you think of like those soccer players that come into football, and they're playing one sport, and they come in and they can do something else because they are so athletically gifted. I'm just thinking.
Once again, we have no records. All of this, zero record, just imagination.
People are gifted in one sport and can convert that to another sport. And that's what Yasuke was. He was gifted. One of his gifts was his warrior training growing up, wherever.
we don't even know where he's from. So how can we say that he had warrior training growing up? The other thing is the Portuguese notoriously did not train slaves or servants in their care. Care is a strange word to use. Associated with them, let's put it that way. They had seen what had happened in previous countries where large numbers of slaves had been trained. The Zanj rebellion, for example, is very well recorded in history. The Arabs mistreated the Bantu people terribly, and they eventually decided, well, we're suffering, so if we die or not, it doesn't really matter. We're going to rebel, and they overthrew their overlords in the Zanj rebellion, and the Portuguese and Spanish really didn't want that to happen. So, as a general rule, they did not train their servants or their slaves as warriors because they just didn't want to risk it. There were certain cases, very rare cases, where it did happen. But in general, especially in East Africa, they actually very widely used militias that they had hired, mercenaries, because A, they knew the terrain, B, the Portuguese did not have the numbers of people that they needed to go in and capture slaves or dominate areas. So using local mercenaries was a very effective way for them to do it. Also, heat, disease, all these things really counted against the Portuguese. They weren't stupid. They used what they had and they used locals whenever they could. So this is very, very, very doubtful.
Wherever he got it. The original thing was he supposedly came from the original story I first read was he came from Mozambique because that's where the Jesuits would stop. If you didn't, you would leave when you were going to India from Europe. You'd leave Lisbon in late March, early April, and then you'd swing around Africa. You'd go between Madagascar and the continent. If you caught the trade wind, if you caught the monsoon winds, you could get to Goa by September. If you didn't catch them in time, you were stuck in Mozambique until it came around the following year.
Except there was no Mozambique at that time.
Well, I won't argue. You're right.
There was an island called Mozambique.
I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah.
I appreciate the clarification.
That is actually true. Mozambique gets its name from the island which was called Mozambique. That's the first thing that's true.
But that's where you would stop and you'd go across. And so that's where they picked up Yasuke.
Yeah.
And Yasuke supposedly is a Japanese version of the biblical name Isaac. So
that's also speculated. Zero proof. As I said, his actual name is recorded nowhere. If he was so important, the Jesuits probably would have recorded at least his name.
Okay.
I do not know if that's correct or not, but that is some of the theory behind it.
It's speculation. Yeah, it's
just speculation.
Yeah, because it doesn't. There is no Japanese word. There's no Japanese word for Yasuke, but there is an associated name in your Shona language for Yasuke.
I would like to know what that is in Shona.
Right,
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with your Shona language.
Yeah, and so he wouldn't get his name changed because of the warrior.
So we've gone from Mozambique to Zimbabwe. Interesting, mind you. Those countries didn't exist back then, so there was some overlap with what's the name of the place? Watapa.
He was initiated into a warrior class, so he would
no evidence
never give up the name he was given during that time. He was a kid. We have speculated, right?
Beautiful. There's the truth. We have speculated. We have zero evidence. We have an abundant imagination, a very creative imagination, but it's not reality. The problem is that these things are being presented as fact, and none of them are facts. Some of them are the opposite of what the documents say. So it's just like, create your own reality. If I get brain hemorrhaging, you'll know why.
We've speculated. We don't have anybody tell us. we speculated, looking at the cultures that he came from, right?
You don't know which cultures he came from.
And the skills he had to have. Plus, he had to
You don't know what skills he has.
have language, right?
You don't know what language skills he had. Except brief comments from the Japanese that he spoke some Japanese, which, if you know Japanese culture, they tend to say, oh, this guy speaks 5 words of Japanese. He's really good. Wow. Just because their culture is quite nice and open in that way, and they tend to like to compliment.
The reasons he got picked. One of the reasons he got accepted by Nobunaga is because he was able to speak fluent Japanese.
There is no mention of him being fluent in Japanese. It literally says he spoke some Japanese. The Portuguese uses the 15th century word for mediocre. It has a meaning of average, not really negative like the modern word mediocre, but it's not exactly a positive connotation in 15th century, 16th century Portuguese either. So neither of this is true. And you have to bear in mind, he spoke by the standard of the time, which was terrible, like objectively terrible.
Now, we got to remember how long it takes to get from Southeast Africa to Goa. I mean, you've got to go back up to like Somalia and then around. You know what I mean? You don't go straight across. So you're on that ship for a long time. So you can, like I've been on ships with like merchant seamen, and one of the things that.
Okay, I hope something normal is going to be said.
They do is they have libraries. They learn all. You can learn all kinds of things.
Okay, wait. A ship in the 1500s that has libraries. This is I'm assuming a trade ship, if not a trade ship, a military ship that's going all the way from Portugal to Japan, and it has a library in it. Please lay off the Colombian marching powder, because this is getting insane. Very few people in the 1500s and even in the 1600s could even afford a book. The average price of a book on the low end was about $150. That's just for a normal book. Books ranged all the way from that price up to $1,000. And you're telling me they had a library on a ship. I have not seen any ship with a dedicated library from the period at all. This is just genuinely, I don't know what another word besides idiotic is, but yes, these are not modern cruise ships. Everything is taken into account for storage, these kinds of things. Were there people that had books on ships? Yes, but they were generally the upper class individuals, not servants. So I don't know where these claims are coming from, because they're so easy to debunk. Just go to the library and buy a book on ships, or buy a book from a library. That doesn't make sense. Go to the library, borrow a book on ships, or if you want to go to a bookshop, buy a book on ships, and tell me where the library is, because I would love to know. I have never seen it. Maybe a kingship. That'd be interesting.
Things. So he arrived in there and picked up the language really fast, right?
How do you just pick up the language? All right. Calm. Deep breaths. I know some really dumb stuff is about to be said.
The other thing is that coming to Kyoto from the coast was a very dangerous trip.
How long was he in Japan before he met Nobunaga?
He was there about a year and a half.
So he picked up Japanese in this time.
No. He didn't pick up Japanese there. No, he picked up Japanese beginning. See, the other thing we don't know is how cosmopolitan the world was then.
It wasn't really. You had small numbers of people definitely moving around the world, but cosmopolitan is definitely not the word you're looking for.
He probably picked up Chinese.
Wait, what?
In Mutapa,
He picked up Chinese in Mutapa in Southeast Africa. Colombian powder is doing its job, I see. All right, I know why they're making this claim. Some Ming Dynasty teacups and small porcelain items were found in Southeast Africa, but that does not mean that Chinese people actually went to Southeast Africa. It just means things were traded from Southeast Africa. And it's not dated. They don't actually know when those Ming Dynasty articles arrived there. It could have been during the Ming Dynasty, but it could have also been a long time later. So this is pure conjecture. We find things traded around the world all the time without people from that place ever having been there. So claiming that he learned Chinese in Mutapa is insane, frankly. And the other thing that they keep saying is he learned Chinese. This is a massive problem. I would like to tell you why. There was no standard Chinese at this time. There was no language called Chinese. There was Jinyu, Putonghua, but not Putonghua yet. It was Guanhua, which is the stage before standardization of Putonghua. There was Wuyu, Ganyu, Xiangyu, Minyu, Yueyu, Hakkayu, or Kejiayu, Pinghua, or Chaozhouhua. All these languages were spoken in China at the time. Okay, so which one did he learn is my question. If he spoke fluent Chinese as well, he just picked up Chinese. Ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous.
probably picked up Japanese when he got to Goa because
He picked up Japanese when he went to Goa. So he was fluent in Japanese. He picked up Japanese in Goa. Let's see. Okay. They're saying that he was fluent in Japanese when he got to the Kansai region. So now we have another problem. There was no standard Japanese, and dialects were quite different at the time. They are still quite different. I mean, if you go to Kansai now and people speak Kansai Ben, you will have a very hard time to understand if you only learned standard Japanese. Okay, so I would like to know from these experts what Japanese he learned. Did he learn Kyokotoba? Did he learn Setsu Ben? Did he learn Kawachi Ben? Did he learn Izumi Ben? Did he learn Yamamoto or Yamato, sorry, Kotoba? Did he learn Banshu Ben? Did he learn Kishu Ben? Did he learn Tanba Ben? Did he learn Tajima Ben? Did he learn Iga Ben? Did he learn Omi Ben? What Japanese did he learn? Because they're not the same. And hang on, he learned Japanese in Kyushu, so he didn't even learn any of those, because if he didn't learn it in Kyushu, he learned it in Goa, but slaves were from Kyushu. So in that case, he didn't even learn any of those. He would have learned Chikuzen Hokken or Chigoku Hokken or Buzen Hokken or Bungo Hokken or Higo Bokken or Hizen Hokken or Hyuga Hokken or Ozumi or Sumi Hokken or Satsuma Hokken or Iki Hokken or Tsushima Hokken. What did he learn? Okay. Literally doesn't make sense. They have no clue what they're talking about. Absolutely zero. And it is annoying.
because the Jesuits were taking Japanese slaves.
Yeah, from Kyushu, not from Kansai.
They were taking Japanese slaves and shipping them around the world, right?
Mhm.
This is one of the points of conflict between the Taiko and the Jesuits, right? That's why they got expelled, was because the Taiko went down to the dock one day and saw that there were 200 slaves on the docks. And that's when he expelled these guys, right? So Yasuke is someone who would have brought this knowledge of falling empires, right?
Sorry, just a quick thing. I don't know the position of Taiko.
Yeah, so anyway, yeah.
What is the position of Taiko?
Huh? The Taiko.
Taiko, that's Hideyoshi.
Yeah, in Kyushu.
Oh, okay.
This is
Hideyoshi, and
yeah.
I'll explain.
Mhm.
He was actually, when he went to Goa, he was picking up Portuguese as
Mhm.
far as what the Jesuits record.
Well, he would have probably picked up Portuguese if he was picked up from West Africa or East Africa anyway, because that was the lingua franca of the time. So it's not like he learned Portuguese suddenly in Goa. If he was a servant or if he was a slave, he probably learned it from childhood, because it's generally good to know that the language that your master speaks.
And so basically that was the lingua franca of the Jesuits. And so he'd be picking up the Portuguese. He would also be picking up the time he'd spent in India, picking up languages there. Plus he knew his own languages. Floyd's right. He probably picked up some Chinese, because when you got into Asia, you picked up partially Chinese.
Once again, there is no such thing called Chinese at the time. What are you talking about? China had many languages at the time, and they are considerably different. Even surviving languages today are considerably different. They cannot understand each other. Why do you not know anything as a historian?
But the one point I will disagree with him on is that most likely he's picking up some Japanese, but it's when he arrives in 1579. He had a natural gift for languages. In addition,
once again, none of this is recorded. This is pure speculation, and I don't know, the cult trip that they're on.
To his fighting skills, in addition to everything else he could do. And so he spent a year and a half in total immersion. And so when he shows up to Nobunaga in March of 1581, I believe it was, and at that point he is speaking some Japanese, he is showing off his skills.
Now, one thing that's important to realize is that the Chinese that he picked up, his ability to speak Chinese would make him an aristocrat, because that's who spoke Chinese.
Wait. Let's go back to that point, okay? His ability to speak Chinese. Let's consider that for a point, okay? So the Japanese in Sengoku period, they had relationship with the Ming dynasty, which spoke several languages. Like I've already said, there was no one standard language yet. It was codified at the very end of Ming. It started to be codified, and then it was fully codified during Qing, which is the next dynasty. These people have no clue what they're talking about. What type of Chinese was being spoken in Sengoku period Japan? It would have been something like, the camera's over there. It would have been something like Guanhua, because that was the standard that was being used in the Chinese court at the time. That was the official language of the Chinese court, not the official language of the country. It wasn't even standardized yet. So that was Guanhua, all right? But if Yasuke was in southern China, they don't speak Guanhua there. It wasn't until a few centuries later that Guanhua even went there, because they were speaking different things like Kejia or Yueyu, which changed into, or modern Cantonese is actually part of that. Totally different. I'll give you an example. In Guanhua, you would say, 你在哪儿? And in Yueyu, you would say, 海滨岛啊? Totally different words. The Chinese characters are not even the same. So the claims they are making is complete and utter rubbish. If he picked up anything, he would probably pick up one of the southern dialects, a little bit of it, just to get by. But no one in Japan could understand those because they didn't use them. There was no need to use them.
Okay, right?
Yes.
It's in the upper classes spoke Chinese.
The upper classes spoke Guanhua, if any. Mostly Chinese was a literary language. You would write something in Wenyanwen, which is kanbun in Japanese, literally literary Chinese. It was a written language, not a spoken language. It was used as a lingua franca in writing because people could not understand each other.
See, the other thing is, he came from the same kind of culture that Japan was. He came from he came from a country of warring states, right? He was trained in a spiritual warfare, right?
Okay, I'm gonna skip to the next part because this is just getting ridiculous. Let's see where I put the timestamp. Look, if I'm gonna get brain hemorrhaging, I'm gonna do it with you.
Tea ceremony.
That's good.
He
Yeah.
also said he instituted learning the Japanese language. He said, we have no business coming
We're talking
here
about Valignano now.
and trying to teach without learning something first, because we're basically, they were trying to run tens of thousands of converts with just a few people, and they couldn't convert enough Japanese.
Yep,
Because they were trying to force them into European ways, and it wasn't working. So one of the things so he forced the Japanese language study. He also forced a little bit of bathing, though this always makes me laugh. This always makes me laugh.
a little bit.
Well, the final word the Jesuits agreed to was twice a month in summer and once a month in winter. And and he had the ability, and he basically sort of learned Japanese, like I said, again, by being just dropped into it. And just because he was such I still use the word genius when I.
We literally know 5 lines about this guy, and he's calling him a genius. Maybe he was. Maybe he wasn't. We don't know. Zero information.
Think about just how incredibly smart that guy was. And as they moved through, Valignano was heavily dependent on Yasuke for just for his own safety. And that people wanted to, there were a lot of people who would have loved to.
So he was so dependent on him. All right. A person can dream, I suppose. Yeah. Mr. Mussell, living the dream.
To have picked off Valignano.
I think this is something we didn't establish, just in case not every.
I'm going to skip ahead because this is all brain dead drivel, which is completely made up. So let's skip ahead here. I made timestamps. I'm not spending hours on this total balderdash.
But the actual story, the actual history we have comes from the Japanese, right?
Thank you. So the only actual history
comes from the Japanese. The only written history we have comes from the Japanese. It also comes from the Jesuits.
And Jesuit documents are very suspect because they're highly unreliable. This is not my opinion. This is well-documented evidence that there is a lot of embellishments in the Jesuit documents. A lot. And that's not even coming from experts outside of the Jesuit field. It's Jesuits that have said that.
And the thing you can see is once he becomes in the employ of Nobunaga, Nobunaga is taken with Yasuke's skills, Yasuke's abilities. He gives him a house.
I have covered this in a different video. The meaning of giving someone a house, a stipend, or a scabbard. They're claiming he was given a sword, but Sayamaki is not really a sword. Not in any conventional definition of one anyway. So he was given a house. He was given living quarters. What that entails, nobody knows because the term used is extremely generic.
He basically
pays
him.
Also, he was given a stipend or support, or it says it can be translated as he was cared for. So he was definitely in Japan. He was not treated as a slave, but as a servant.
He
Gives him a wife.
essentially
There is no record. Okay, this is a complete lie. There's no record of him receiving a wife at all, anywhere. I would love to see you show documented evidence. Please show me now.
promotes him to Hatamoto. If you've watched,
No record of Hatamoto. In fact, if he had been Hatamoto, we would not be even having this conversation. This conversation would be pointless because there would be a huge amount of records. Hatamoto is not just some small passing title. It is a major title. It is someone that is very close to the Lord. And I'm not even sure that he could be really Hatamoto because Nobunaga was not a shogun. He was daimyo. So I would have to check up on that. But I don't think it was even physically possible for him to really be Hatamoto. Don't quote me on that. I need to check it up because I don't know everything. But certainly if he had been Hatamoto, we would have a huge amount of evidence. That's not something that goes unrecorded. That would be everywhere. And that would be something that's even in Japanese school kids' history material, if that were the case.
Shogun, that's what William Adams
Yeah.
gets, or
Yeah.
Blackthorne gets promoted to, and he's
I don't think that referring to these things is really helpful, to be honest. Works of fiction.
becomes part of the amazing story about Yasuke. To show how far he went in Japanese culture, goes to Nobunaga's assassination.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he fought a couple of times. The first time was within
Zero record of actually fighting. I have to say this. He was present in places where battles happened, but servants and slaves and lower ranking people generally didn't fight because you would get sashimied in a very short time. Zero record once again. He was at a place where a battle happened. Doesn't mean he fought in a battle.
the shinobi groups in Iga.
What?
The ninja-
Yasuke did that? I never heard this part.
We're going to see some backtracking happen here.
That's awesome.
Okay, what Yasuke did not fight in there. It is more of afterwards.
There we go. Yeah. We'll see a lot of backtracking like this. Because they keep on making up their own reality, they keep making mistakes. And even this guy, Andrew, who I'm assuming is just a show host, and I'm sure he just believes them because he thinks they're experts, which is the sad reality of the situation we find ourselves in. Anyone can apparently call themselves an expert these days. Oh, I didn't know I had tea. But this is where we find ourselves. He's about to backtrack, as we've seen. Oh, he was fighting with Iga. Oh, actually, he wasn't. What?
But they
Okay.
set up a trap. They set up
Yeah.
an ambush for Nobunaga. And Yasuke was there when it happened. And they survived, but that was his first taste of battle in Nobunaga, with Nobunaga. The second time is going after the Takeda. And following in Nobunaga's son, who was taking out the Takeda clan. And so that's where, if you've got female, though there's not a real history of female shinobi.
There's zero history of female shinobi, actually. This is another myth that needs to be addressed. There were kind of later on in Edo, there were kind of what they call kunoichi, which is a kind of a female version. But at this time in Sengoku, even Takeda, they did not have anything like that. They had women that they sent out as spies, which did things like collect information and offer other more, let's say, adult services in order to attain that information. but no shinobi, and at this time, not even kunoichi. So this is just wrong. I mean, I don't know how you call yourself a historian. Like, I'm a linguist, and I know all of these things are wrong. So
The old term for ninja.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to have that, as I think I understand Assassin's Creed is going to,
Yes.
the best way you're going to pull it is you're going to pull it from where the Takeda clan would have been, because there's some understanding that this is where he fought. And so I don't know how.
Once again, if they wanted to actually make her a real character, she would be a pretty lady that tries to seduce people of high rank and get into their social circles so that she can get information on them. That's what she would be doing, because that's literally what happened. I'm gonna skip forward because I can't listen to all this brain dead stuff. Let's go to, where's my timestamp? 37.
But
this game is going to sell.
but,
I mean,
you know,
like
This game's gonna sell. Yeah. You called that one well.
I
Yeah,
think
it's
it's
gonna
going
be
to
big.
sell too. It's just it's a fun idea to speculate what happened to him.
yeah,
Yeah.
Controversy always results in 30 to 40% more sales.
Always.
That is true.
And these crazy guys online, man, have made it. They have brought more attention to that game than advertising ever could.
Yeah, true.
They've
dropped off with
introduced
Assassin's Creed after part
this
2.
game to people that don't play games and who are going to buy it just to spite these guys.
Well,
You know
I
what I
started off this podcast because
I love how this aged. It's brilliant. The company is so successful that their stock prices are crashing. It's beautiful. It's amazing how well they're doing. It's amazing that they put the number of players after releasing free keys, not saying number of customers, to hide the fact that the game isn't selling. Yeah, not doing so well in Steam or on Amazon or wherever actually it's being sold. So that aged well. Well done. Good job.
of like what I've seen on TikTok in particular, like people saying he's not a samurai. That was why it was my
'Cause he's
first
not.
question to you guys,
Mhm.
because it's like it's
Internal-
it's fact that he was in the
It's fact that
employ of
Internal
Nobunaga,
bias is a bitch, man.
and he was his
Yeah.
sword bearer.
he wasn't. I've covered this as well. He's literally called a tool bearer, not a sword bearer.
Delivered his fucking head
It's-
to his son.
Also never happened. No record of it. If that had happened, that would be a major thing that is recorded, but it's not. Maybe because it never happened.
Like, what do you want? This is
Wait,
what a samurai does.
They said
He
he's not
fought
a
in
son.
battles under Nobunaga.
Once again, zero record of actually being involved in a battle.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
said he
I
wasn't
can't
a
get it
samurai.
either. It's
He's a
You can't get it. Well, I guess there's no help for you then. Sorry, I don't make the rules, man.
retainer. He's not a samurai. I'm like, what the hell?
that's
Yeah,
somebody
that
doesn't know what
whole
they're
argument.
talking about.
Yeah, because a retainer is not necessarily a samurai. What do you want to hear?
That's
And that's
It's like saying a page is a knight. Now, the Western system, the knight system, and the samurai system are not the same, but it's generally saying a page is a knight. No, they're not. Can a knight act as a page? Yes, but it does not mean that every page is a knight.
that's splitting hairs at its finest.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
Because
not.
and I'll explain what I
It's
mean.
literally the
image we
definition
have
of
of a
words.
samurai, the image we have in the modern samurai, doesn't exist until Tokugawa.
Okay.
Okay, so now he's going to talk about asynchronism, and it's going to be funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but the original we've all heard the term samurai means those who serve.
Right.
Mhm.
That's it. There it is.
But let's go to the tale of let's go to I think the tale of the Heike. And I've got a translation by Dr. McCullough, and she puts in there the thing is, by this time period, he said the hardest thing about the word samurai is that everybody doesn't realize we've taken a term that starts 17th century onward when they formalized the caste system, and we've applied it back through history. And so it used to be,
Bushi.
came from,
I think he was called Bushi, right?
Bushi just means
Before
warrior.
samurai.
Bushi does not mean samurai. There was actually Bushi system is Chinese. It also existed in Korea. While China and Korea had Bushi systems, they never had samurai. Just being a Bushi does not make you samurai. In Goryeo, the end of Goryeo, when Joseon was being founded, they got rid of the Bushi system, frankly, because scholars were too scared of them. But yeah, that's simply not true. I mean, obviously, none of these people read classical Chinese or kanji or anything. So they're just making up meanings of the word. Well, I think it means this. It doesn't.
Bushi just means warrior. He would have,
Right.
by the time you're getting into the late
mean
16th
warrior.
century, the term samurai has finally developed.
The shi part on Bushi, and the word is originally wushi. In Korean, it would be musha, and in Japanese, obviously Bushi. The end character it implies some kind of professionalism.
Developed. It went through a lot of gyrations. You would have, if you go back about 100 years, 200 years, the word samurai would have more translated as squire, and you
That's not true.
would have been using the term gokennin.
I don't even know what that word is because your pronunciation is too poor.
And it used to be samurai, and
It used to be what?
then you have the nominal form sabarahi, and then but the H was silent in Heian Japanese.
No. Mr. Mussell, it's time to stop talking. Okay. So Japanese has evolved over time, like any language does. In the Nara and early Heian periods, saburafu was it was actually a verb, which means to attend or to serve near a noble person. In the Heian period, the later Heian, I should say, we had the word saburahi and samurai, which were retainers or attendants of the lords. Sometimes they were warriors, sometimes they weren't. But then when we get to Kamakura is when the our stereotypical idea of a samurai starts to emerge from there. By the time we get to Muromachi Sengoku, samurai are armed vassals and warriors in the service of a lord, in this case, a daimyo, all right? Then in the Edo period, it becomes a very kind of hierarchical case system. It was a case system before, but that's when everything is standardized, because there were different rules in different clans. Now, what he said about there being no H sound, or the H being silent in Heian Japanese it's wrong. It's wrong. It's very wrong. And yes, it's wrong. In Heian Japanese, the H sound was a bilabial frictive, we call it. And that means the air is blown out when you say it. So it's more like a soft F sound, like h. That's why when we read modern Japanese, this has actually been retained in the fu, like fugu. That was originally in the old days, that would have been a P sound. So we would have gone pa, pi, pu, pe, po, and then it changed to ha hi hu he ho, and then it became ha hi hu he ho fu, like this. Um, yeah, so that's really not true. I don't know where he get this information. Maybe from someone that's not good at linguistics.
And so that's why you went from sabarao to sabarai to samurai. And
that's cool. That's cool.
and so
It's
that, but like I
wrong.
said, it was
It's
sound.
wrong.
You could back in Heian Japan, back in the 8th century, when this term first comes out, and there's some tracing it to Nara, but I haven't got anything more than somebody's post on Facebook. I'm not going to go with that.
That's a
What
first
you
for you.
mean is somebody, if the person, if it just meant somebody serving in a high-ranking position, so an armed retainer. Yes, that would have been the old term of the sabarahu sabarai. But somebody going.
Well, the old term was really a verb. It wasn't a noun yet in Nara. It became a noun.
Down to the corner drugstore and picking up my meds for the week would have also been a sabarai. Back in the hay.
Once again, it was a verb, not a noun. Not sure this is registering.
An error. And it's only as you come in a few hundred years and you come into an armed retainer, which is by the tale of the Heike, the term samurai is using, the term we know of today as samurai is being used mostly as an armed retainer, though not always. And then you get to the 16th century where it's finally becoming samurai. But we all think of samurai
becoming samurai
in that
it's already samurai by Kamakura.
Caste, in that modern caste system, which doesn't exist until the 17th century.
Well, yes and no. The modern caste system didn't, but there was already caste systems in place. The shuffling of the caste system was just a little bit different. But then again, you're the historian.
But we've applied the word retroactively, and that's one of the biggest challenges in looking at Japanese history. There are so many terms, like in Shogun, and I'll say it with the Shogun, the most recent Shogun series. They don't say the word kimono. Do you know why?
Doesn't exist yet.
Doesn't exist yet. But everything is done on a kimono.
Anyway, it's quite funny that they talk about the time periods because they retroactively apply Edo period rules, which take place after Hideyoshi's sword hunt declaration, where they made it illegal basically for non-samurai and non-bushi to carry weapons because they wanted to get rid of weapons in public. But during Sengoku, there was no such rule. Doctors, merchants, even farmers in many cases were able to carry weapons. And there were a lot of weapons around. Now, the same people will argue that because he was given a house, Yasuke was given a house or lodging, as we've talked about, I have a whole video on that, because he was given wages, so he wasn't treated like a slave, and because he was given a sayamaki, which is a scabbard, it doesn't even necessarily refer to a blade. This makes him a samurai, but that's using Edo period rules. And even in Edo period, getting a sayamaki would not make you a samurai at all. It's quite laughable, actually. They are the ones that are applying Edo period rules to Sengoku, but then getting upset when other people make the mistake. Sounds a little bit hypocritical.
Mono. In most.
Anyway, I'm going to skip ahead because this is already way too much time, more than I wanted to. And he's about to step on my toes.
There is an ideographic language in Southeast Africa. You know, there was.
So they're not even using terms like language or script properly. There are different types of script in Africa, definitely, but there is no full writing system in Southeast Africa. If there was, it would be amazing, but nothing like that has been found yet, sadly.
written language that that looks almost like kanji, you know. So
I would love to see it if it looks anything like kanji.
there's, so there's so many similarities. You know what I mean? There's just all of these historic similarities that people don't know because they don't know how. You have to know where something is if you want to find it.
I think there's probably a lot of mysteries with the Silk Road.
The Silk Road and the spice trade. Silk Road comes over, the spice trade goes down, under, and around, right?
But I would also add something to Floyd, what he's saying about the writing. There's about 8 cultures that have the first writing systems, if I remember correctly. And Floyd, correct me if I'm wrong, please. That
I would not be getting language advice from that guy, Mr. Mussell. You might as well just make something up as well.
Hieroglyphics has been extremely old.
Right.
You had like 8 different cultures on the African continent in that time period who have established writing systems.
Yeah.
And the one change is that
the problem here is they're talking about writing systems, and they're not really giving a definition of what it is. There were some basic writing systems, we can call it. They were not languages. They were just to note down numbers of things or some key concepts of things, but nothing that you would be writing out full sentences or literature with in Southeast Africa anywhere at that time. Now, North Africa is a totally different story. There's a bunch of different types of syllabaries, logographics, abjads, abugidas, all kinds of different writing system that developed in North Africa. Egyptian hieroglyphs, well, they're logographic. We have hieratic script, which is the cursive form of Egyptian hieroglyphs, and they changed the system a bit. We have demotic script, which is a really simplified version of Egyptian. We have meroitic script, which is from Nubia. That's alpha syllabary, and it is beautiful. I really do like it. If you don't know where Nubia is, that is modern day Sudan. Also a place with lots of rich culture. Then we have what else do we have? Let's see, Libico-Berber alphabet, which is an abjad. The Berber writing system is quite interesting. We have guise script, which is from Ethiopia and, well, Eritrea, but Eritrea was not a separate country. It is now. And guise is an abugida type script. We have Old South Arabian or Sabaean, which is found in Eritrea and Tigray as well, but that is actually from Yemen, so I'm not sure if you would count that as African continent. Then you have Coptic alphabet, which is basically based on Greek. So I don't know if you could really classify that as African. It is kind of developed there, but it's definitely influenced from Greek.
that is Japan was late in developing a writing system as far as a
Chinese.
It took the Chinese because you had the Pekje.
Right.
Basically,
It's not Pekje, it's, or however he's saying it, it's Bekje.
Pekje brought it over in the 4th and 5th century, and so we had writing getting into Japan earlier because it was on gifts, but it would look like decorative art. They weren't aware it was a writing thing yet.
I don't know where you learned that, because that really doesn't make any sense to me. And this is literally a period of history that I've intensively studied, and I'm still studying now, because there's a lot of crossover from Korean and Japanese languages at that time, a lot of similarities. So I'm researching how those correlate to each other. Now, Baekje, they did introduce the classical Chinese from Tang Dynasty in China. But by the time that the Baekje had introduced the actual Tang Dynasty, not just their products, this was not gifts, this was products being traded. Tang Dynasty products were in high demand in Japan in the early Narahean periods. So at that time already, educated people could write classical Chinese according to the Tang version of classical Chinese. Baekje people had introduced and had communicated with Wagoku for a really long time. And by the time that they physically introduced the Japanese to the Chinese, they'd already learned the writing system, and they had envoys that could actually speak because they had people in Baekje that could speak actual Chinese as was spoken in the Tang court at the time.
Until the Baekje introduced the kanji to the Heian, to the Yamato court. So as far as civilizations go, you have with Japan, you have, I mean, going back to Africa, just you had these huge, like I said, I think I think a number is 8 that had a writing system going back thousands of years.
Not thousands of years. Some of these are quite recent developments. Some of the languages I mentioned are not that old, the writing systems, at least.
That's
on
cool.
this side of the country, you had Japan coming to it late. You had you had the Okinawan culture, the Ryukyuan culture coming to it late.
But Ryukyu also had direct relation with China for a long time, so also not the full facts.
Also had the Ainu culture, who never developed I don't think ever developed a writing system.
I don't think they did either.
So that's all the brain damage I can handle for the moment. But basically, yeah, they're just making everything up, and I don't really know what to say apart from what I've said. It's pretty much all nonsense. So that was the review, and to everyone that complained and said, please do a review, I hope you're happy now. All right, over and out. I've got other work to do. Yeah, bye.